first solo podcast episode of 2026. This is going to be awesome. We're going to be talking everything mushrooms today. Now, a lot of people have been gaslit about mushrooms. They've been told crazy things like, oh, if you need to eat healthier, just swap your burger out for a mushroom. It tastes exactly the same. That is a fabrication. That is a lie. That is not true. It is, in fact, much grosser and, in fact, not meat. Okay, so let's get out of the way. We've dispelled one rumor and we're not 30 seconds in. That's how useful this podcast is going to be for you. Okay, so this podcast is going to be everything mushrooms. Now, we're not going to get into the psychedelic, I licked a frog and then I saw Jesus type of mushroom. Okay, we're not going to get into the Aaron Rodgers, I went down to South America with my imaginary wife, who definitely is real, and she goes to a different school, guys, but she's real, and we're married, and we're very happy. We're not going to get into any of those types of mushrooms today. We're going to get into store-bought mushrooms and a lot of non-psychoactive supplementary mushrooms that have enormous benefit that a lot of people are sleeping on. Mushrooms are fantastic for your health. And 2026 is going to be the year that all of us get healthy. Now, I want to preface this by saying we're going to go over general guidelines that are based on available research. All right. Obviously, talk to your doctor before doing shrooms. That should be a given. Should be a given. I'm not telling you to take any of these mushrooms. I'm giving you information. So if you are out there and you are trying to recover from some sort of illness, you are trying to enhance performance, or you're just trying to live a healthier life so that you can go out and do all the things that maybe you live such a healthy life on these mushrooms that you can go back to meat burgers and life can have meaning again. The color will come back into the world. You'll go out, all of a sudden, all of the women will love you. All of the men will look up to you. It will be a beautiful day in America for you, or wherever you're listening from. I know a lot of you are listening in India. I know a lot of you are listening in Australia. A beautiful day. People will look up to you and admire you and love you there too. So we're going to get into the mushrooms. Now, we're going to cover a couple different things. We're going to cover, what are these mushrooms and what do they do? How much of them were, what was the dosing tested in these research studies? We're going to get into some different options when you're shopping, and I'm going to help you kind of walk through how to think about these things and some sort of pitfalls to watch out for. And then at the very end, we're going to get into a little bit of a marketing misnomer, sort of how, with a lot of foods, they'll market it as organic. But the food isn't organic in the sense that you're thinking about, where I'm thinking, pasture raised, wasn't presented with certain foods during its feeding process. It was fed a very natural diet. It lived a very natural lifestyle. And your name is Brian Johnson, and you've not, a molecule of sugar hasn't entered your body since 2019, and you've been running on nothing but plants and supplements and your son's exosomes for 5 years now, and then you just get a little tiny piece of organic, but not really organic chicken, and you just explode right there in Whole Foods, and you die. So we're going to start, and I will tell you along the way, because I have taken some of these mushrooms and take some of these mushrooms. I'll tell you what my personal experiences has been with them. Spoiler, it's been awesome, but we're going to get into that. So the first one we're going to start with is called turkey tail, Chamaetes versicolor. I'm going to get all the scientific names wrong, but I'm going to try them for your entertainment. Now, this is a very colorful fungus. If you see it out in the wild, I recommend looking up all these mushrooms because sometimes you might see them on trees, especially in like old grove forests. If you can get to somewhere where the forest has been undisturbed for a very long time, you'll see a lot of these mushrooms. 90%, I would say, 90% plus of the ecosystem of plants that you see around you on a given day are in some way connected to a mycelium network, which is just a root network of fungus that's under the soil. This is a separate podcast to do, but if you're ever into gardening, one of the stupidest things you can do is use fertilizer because it destroys this network. You're much better off using inoculants and using it's what is it called? Endo. I'm gonna look this up as we're doing. I think it's like endomycelio powder for plants. I believe that's what it's called. There's something like that. Endomycorrhizal. That's what we want. Endomycorrhizal inoculants. There's ectomycorrhizal inoculants as well. Different plants require different ones. So I'm not going to get deep into the mycorrhizal fungi stuff and how to build your soil properly so that nutrients can be used by your plants. Like I said, totally separate podcast, but there's endo and ectomycorrhizal fungi that you can look into, and I highly recommend looking into it. So turkey tail, this is a powerhouse for your immune system. Now, research will indicate and has indicated that it stimulates the immune system through compounds like polysaccharide K, PSK, which has been approved as like an anti-cancer drug in Japan by itself. A good thing to remember for a lot of people, because I think a lot of people will look at supplements like mushrooms and kind of just, sniff their nose and go, man, it's kind of crunchy and dirty and all the hippie stuff. And the person that I know that loves mushrooms is this weird lady with lots of necklaces, and her hair doesn't look like it's been washed in a while, and she's got a long flowy and a third eye, and she lives in a hut, and it's very hot inside, like that kind of thing. And I totally get it. All of the medicines that we have come from plants and animals. A lot of these peptides that are taking the market, they come from animals. A lot of these cancer drugs and these other drugs that we've developed come from plants. That's where we find them. So understand how drugs are made and where they're synthesized from. Like this PSK, which comes from turkey tail, and other areas, it comes from other sources as well, but turkey tail has it. And like I said, it's been approved as an anti-cancer drug in Japan, and it has shown promise to improve survival rates in patients with certain cancers like gastric and colorectal cancer, which can be used alongside, and I would say, might as well use it alongside standard treatments, right? It shows potential in fighting leukemia cells, reducing inflammation. The footnote here is that typical dosing is 2 to 3 grams of extract or whole mushroom powder daily, often for 12 to 36 months in a clinical setting for an adjunct to cancer support. With all of these, you're going to want to wean up because a lot of these have prebiotic fiber in them, like turkey tail does. And it can take your stomach a little bit of a time to digest. So if you decide like, I'm going to go on a sick supplement protocol of 4 different mushrooms at 4 grams each, whatever it is, and you chug that in, it could be a long day on the porcelain palace for you, King. All right. So maybe ease into some of these things, starting with 2 grams, working your way up to 3 potentially. You're going to want to try to use this for probably 1.5 to 2 months before you're going to notice an effect. I will say that I have taken turkey tail in conjunction with another mushroom we're going to talk about called the Garicon. They were done in a study that was done with a company we're going to talk about later called Host Defense, that was done during COVID, and it was done in conjunction, I believe, with the U.S. government and the NIH. And what they studied was, I believe, 500 milligrams either 2 or 3 times a day. And they took it in conjunction with the COVID vaccine. Now, what they were trying to do with this vaccine is figure out if there was a way to boost the antibody response while minimizing side effects. As with anything that is modulating your immune system, any sort of therapy, like a vaccine will do, which its primary function is through the immune system. Two of the concerns with that are an hyper response, which some people can have where their immune system over responds, and that's not a good thing, or a hypo response where their immune system under responds, and that's also not a good thing. So what these 2 mushrooms were able to do in conjunction is help to modulate, so make sure that the immune system didn't overreact and also didn't underreact, and that it continued to produce antibodies much longer than people who didn't take the mushrooms. And also they had far fewer side effects, including soreness on the shoulder. Like those side effects and all other side effects were greatly reduced by a very large factor. So turkey tail, great one to look into. Another one that is very popular is Ganoderma lucidum which sounds like a Harry Potter character, but it's actually a reishi mushroom. Now, this mushroom, brace yourselves, the nickname it has is the mushroom of immortality. It boosts antioxidants. It is anti-inflammatory. It has immune modulatory properties. It's gonna be a common theme with immune modulating properties. Okay, spoiler, it's gonna be a common theme. So, studies have shown and would suggest that reishi can very drastically reduce anxiety and stress. It promotes better sleep. It can aid in weight loss. It can fight cancer cells. It can support heart health by lowering cholesterol and blood sugar levels. And obviously, anytime you're promoting better sleep, you're going to be promoting very holistic health improvements. Sleep is one of the best things you can do for yourself, and reducing stress on top of that. So better sleep means your NK and T cells are going to be more active, which means they're going to be better at fighting cancer cells. It means you're going to get better sleep. It's going to be easier to lose weight. Your heart's going to be functioning better. So a lot of this stuff kind of goes hand in hand, right? Now, common dosing here is about 1 to 3.6 grams daily in a capsule or extract form. Again, taken over weeks to months for tonic effects like stress reduction. It's not going to be something that you take and, in my experience, you just instantly feel calm. It's something that over time helps you gradually be more stress resilient. Now, it's flu season. At least it is here in America. So what's a great mushroom to take for flu season? Well, you can take Ophiocordyceps sinensis, otherwise known as cordyceps. Now, this is known for boosting energy and athletic performance, mainly. I will say that. It has been shown in research to enhance endurance work. It helps the body cope with stress and, again, modulate the immune function. It can potentially aid in managing chronic kidney disease. That is a little bit more emerging research, but there is some potential there. Now, it also has antioxidant and anti-diabetic benefits. There is something in cordyceps called cordycepin. Cordycepin, otherwise known as 3-deoxyadenosine, is a natural compound from the cordyceps fungi that has significant research interest at the moment for its potential health benefits, including anti-cancer, tumor cell death, anti-aging, immune modulating stuff. It works by interfering cell growth pathways and mimicking adenosine. It is studied in various ailments and various other settings. Now, there is a company called Troscriptions, okay? And I'm not sponsored by any of the companies today. I'm just telling you about some of these companies and some of the things that they've done. There's a company called Troscriptions. They sell a number of different products, but they sell a troch called Tromune, Tromune, that I think is very helpful if you're always getting sick. Maybe you work around kids a lot, you're out and about, you want to take something. This is a very helpful thing to take. It's not super expensive. I think, one pack is like $20 or something like that. And you get 4 doses per pack. So you're essentially getting 4, 16, 32. So you get a month, right? That will give you 75 milligrams of cordycepin. That's sort of the main ingredient in that product, right? Now, agarikon, Fomitopsis, I'm officinalis. I messed up the first word. Let's move on. This is a lesser known polymorph mushroom. This is not as big. The only place I know that sells it right now is Host Defense, and their leader, Paul Stamets, who's a legend of mushrooms. I 100% recommend looking at Paul Stamets, listening to his talks. It's so interesting. But it has some historical use in traditional medicine, and it is very has emerging research in like antiviral and antibacterial stuff with some potential for anti-cancer. The dosing here is not well established. A lot of blends will have 250 to 500 milligrams per serving. I'm guessing that it's going to work out to be like 1 gram to 2 or so. Myself, I have taken it in conjunction with turkey tail. I've never taken it by itself. But when I was having health issues post antibiotics, which I got a little bit of antibiotic poisoning, It's called F-Quad. Now, yes, F-Quad was the evil king from Shrek 1. It is also known as fluoroquinolone syndrome or fluoroquinolone associated disability. And it's basically it's a constellation of like severe, disabling, and potentially permanent adverse reactions to a class of antibiotics called fluoroquinolones. Now, I took one that was for a potential UTI that they thought I had, which I didn't have. And that's a whole other story. But I had some really, I had some very bad side effects with exercise where I would go to do a lunge and it felt like I'd done 1,000 lunges. Like my leg muscles were burning. Getting past that was extremely tough, but this mushroom combination of agarikon and turkey tail really helped me. Now, I had Cipro. That was the fluoroquinolone that I took, Cipro. And if you want to look up Cipro horror stories, feel free to look them up. I feel like I got off very easy comparatively, but I still have had a number of problems since, and I've slowly been over the years able to work back. And one of the things that I've been able to get back quickly to exercise with was the combination of turkey tail and agarikon. That helped me enormously. And I don't think it's a coincidence that I think it largely helped me because it helped my gut, where 70% of your immune system is in your gut, folks. 70%. You know, it's this is not rocket science. This is SAM level science. Okay, if I can figure this out, you can figure this out. Now, there's also Pleurotus ostreatus, which is an oyster mushroom. Now, oyster mushrooms offer a lot of antioxidant and cholesterol lowering effects. Again, anti-cancer and immune modulatory. They're also very nutritious. Lots of vitamins, good amount of fiber. Great, right? Some of these you can actually buy just for, to eat, cook and eat at the grocery store. 1 to 3 grams, usually extract daily, or in food about 3.5 ounces per serving regularly over the week has these benefits. We get to Anatus obliquus, which is chaga, packed full of antioxidants. Chaga combats oxidative stress like nothing you ever seen, okay? It reduces inflammation, and it may lower LDL cholesterol. So that's another great thing for a lot of people out there. Now, we're not going to get into the weeds on LDL cholesterol and looking at, ApoB versus HDL to LDL ratios. I know LDL cholesterol as a single metric has started to fall down as far as the most advanced in specific diagnostic tool, to the point where I think a lot of people out there were going to say, worry more about these other markers. But if you're someone who needs to lower your LDL cholesterol for the purposes of a better HDL to LDL ratio, then this is an option. This is dosed generally around a tablespoon, which is about 2 grams of powder. Again, 4 to 8 weeks. You want to monitor oxalate intake here to avoid any excess. That's a very good thing to keep and wear because you don't want to give yourself kidney stones, right? The next mushroom, which is one of my favorite mushrooms I've ever taken, Hericium arensis. I didn't say it right, but I will nail this next one. This is lion's mane, folks. This is the famous brain health mushroom. It supports cognitive function, nerve growth, BDNF production. This one's an awesome one. And I will tell you from personal experience, if you take a crap ton of it before bed, you are going to have the craziest dreams you have ever had in your life. It's not psychoactive, strictly speaking, but boy, you're gonna go to some places. I went to some other worlds. I don't remember the dream super well, but I can tell you that I do remember at one point in the dream, I was a gladiator fighting what appeared to be some sort of water-based creature in front of a lot of people in a coliseum, and I didn't want to do it. So I got on a horse, and then I strode and I jumped over the coliseum out, and as I did, gold flooded out into the ocean that just happened to be on the other side of the Coliseum. And my horse and I sunk into the water to the bottom of the ocean. And then I looked up and there was 100-foot giants in front of me. If that's the kind of dream you're interested in, 5 grams of lion's mane 30 minutes before you go to bed. Thank me later. Now, most people dose it about 1 to 2 grams daily in powder over prolonged periods to notice cognitive benefits. Like I said, I accidentally took a big old dose of it, and that's what I got. So do with that information what you will. Now, it can also help with asthma and mood issues sometimes. If maybe you have trouble breathing sometimes. You're a little asthmatic and you get moody because of it. Happens to all of us. I'd be moody too if I couldn't breathe. I'd be a little moody as well. Just take some lion's mane. Maybe it'll help over time. Don't forget your inhaler. Now, Griffola frondosa, everyone's favorite quarterback from the University of IU, Indiana, otherwise known as the maitake mushroom. Now, maitake enhances immune activity. It has antiviral properties, cholesterol lowering, blood sugar control. You're seeing a pattern here, okay? 1 to 3 grams, 4 to 8 weeks. There was something in the air that night. The stars so bright. Frondosa. King Trumpet. Pleurotus angularly. Who knows? But it is King Trumpet. It's very similar to oyster mushrooms. Antioxidants, immune boosting, cholesterol lowering, and nutritional value like fiber and vitamins, which is always great. Another one you might be able to get as food in the grocery store, 1 to 3 grams, eating with meals, that sort of thing. Now, this is going to be an interesting one. Now, this is active. This is AHCC, active hexose correlated compound. Now, this is derived from a shiitake mycelium. Now, we're going to talk about shiitake next, all right? But before we start talking shiitake about other mushrooms, this compound excels in immune modulation, with research purporting its use for cancer, adjunct therapy, liver health, and fighting infections. It is specifically, I believe, I don't want to make sure I get this correct, but yes, it increases levels of natural killer cells, T cells, macrophages, and interleukin-12. And it has shown, like I said, these anti-cancer properties, but also anti-angiogenesis activity in early bladder cancer and possibly in prostate cancer too. If you know anything about cancer, your natural killer cells and your T cells are huge. And especially if you have to go on chemotherapy, a lot of these therapy drugs that you take for cancer are going to affect, your lymphocytes and some of your other immune markers. So being able to take something like this could be very helpful for you in that situation. Or if you just know that your numbers are on the lower end, then taking it can maybe help boost it. That one's a bit more expensive and a bit harder to track down, but there is, if you just Google it, there is an Asian company, a Japanese company, I believe, that is selling it. You can buy it straight from Japan. Now, shiitake, lentula, eridas, shiitake. It's a very popular culinary mushroom. I'm sure we've all had it. It good blood pressure, gut health, immune cells, all that sort of thing. 3.5 ounces, what you're looking to get pretty regularly. Not as common. Some people do supplement it at 1 to 3 grams, but this is one you can generally eat. Just throw in a meal, and that's usually the better way to get it. Portobello, Agaricus bisporus. That's the mature form, and we only eat mature mushrooms here. These are grocery staples. Low calorie, high protein, fiber, B vitamins. These are the ones that often they're telling you to replace like some sort of meat with. Don't do that, folks. Let meat be meat. Okay? Don't insult meat. I'll tell you this story too. I ate one time at the Gordon Ramsay restaurant at the hotel in London airport, and I ordered an English breakfast that came with a big portobello mushroom that they had cooked next to some eggs and a couple other things, right? They charged me almost $60 for this meal. $60 for 4 eggs and a big portobello mushroom. So, my sister got a burger while we were there as well, and that was an additional $50. I ended up paying over $100 for a burger, mushroom, and 4 eggs. And I told her, I said, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to watch you finish every single thing. I don't care if you throw up in front of me. We're finishing everything on the plate because I'm paying $115 for 4 eggs, half a mushroom, half a portobello mushroom, and a burger. That's an aside. That's my portobello story. But eat 1 to 3.5 ounces per serving. Now, exposed to sunlight for 15 minutes, there is some vitamin D benefits with portobello. A lot of people don't know that. Portobello mushrooms, like other fungi, can convert UV light into vitamin D2. Okay? Now, is D2 the best form of vitamin D? No. No, it is not. It comes from plants and fungi mainly. D3 is what you're going to want to get in all of your supplements. It comes from animals. D3 is a lot more effective and longer lasting, but you are going to get some benefit from D2. It's generally used in like high dose prescriptions and is like the option for vegans. So if you're vegan out there, you're trying to get D2. Otherwise, you're trying to get D3 from the sun itself. But it's a little bit extra vitamin D, which a lot of people could probably use, especially up north if you're not getting a lot of sunlight. Take what you can get. 15 minutes exposure for that vitamin D. That's all you're going to need. Incorporating it into meals is fantastic. The white Agaricus bisporus. Now, this is, again, portobello, not as mature form. This is called the button mushroom. Very common, B vitamins, selenium fiber, low in calories. There is the cremini mushroom, Agaricus bisporus, brown variety. Now, this is similar to buttons. They have the thing to note with them is they have a higher selenium for antioxidant protection. Selenium is also a very important thing to have for your thyroid. So if you have thyroid problems, selenium is a very important thing to make sure you're getting in. You can get it from Brazil nuts, but they tend to be more expensive than some of these mushrooms. So keep that in mind. And also you're getting like potassium and B vitamins. You're potentially reducing MCI risk with regular intake, which is mild cognitive impairment. The last mushroom we're going to talk about is enoki. Enoki, which I believe is a character in pretty much every anime I've ever been forced to watch. The actual name of enoki is Flamunlina voluptis. Flamunlina voluptis. These slender mushrooms, very slender mushrooms, they have a mild cancer, anti-cancer, and immune-enhancing effects, vitamins, unsaturated fats, fiber. Great to throw onto things. Great to throw onto, if you're doing a quinoa bowl or a rice bowl and you're trying to throw stuff in, enoki is a great thing to throw right on top of that. That's a quick overview of what some of these mushrooms can do. And there's other proposed and potential benefits of these mushrooms that we're not going to get into because there's just not a ton of research there. But one of the things you're going to hear a lot about with these mushrooms is something called beta-glucans. Okay? Beta-glucans. Now, what's important to know about beta-glucans is part of the immunological activity that is produced when you take a mushroom supplement is due to beta-glucan content. But there is a wide range of polysaccharides like PSK that we talked about and other novel compounds that are responsible for immune activation and modulation. Paul Stamets has talked about this, Host Events talks about this, and I believe the science supports the following: that singling out beta-glucans as the only active compound fails to account for the complex chemistry of the mushroom mycelium-based supplement formula. Now, it's also very misleading. Beta-glucans are a classification of compounds structurally termed as polymers that there's hundreds of them. There's hundreds of different beta-glucan shapes and sizes. Some beta-glucans are biologically active, some are not. This is because every sugar linkage comprising a beta-glucan polysaccharide can have a varying number of units, and the biochemistry of it can be a little bit different. There can be attached at different points to the sugar unit. I'm sure all of you guys remember, working with like hydrogen bonds and these different types of bonds, strong bonds, weak bonds, these types of things in chemistry class. Now, that similar visual is very helpful here. It's not exactly the same on a chemistry level, but it's a very helpful imagery to have. Now, the inherent complexity of the structure is not really taken into account using the current assay methods, which is the standard, paradoxically, that is used in the industry. So the reported beta-glucan values that several independent laboratories will come out with can vary greatly, even when identical assays are performed on identical samples. The most commonly employed assays for the determination of beta-glucan content can only detect soluble beta-glucans. The insoluble beta-glucans remain undetected. Beta-glucans differ in their solubility depending on their size, their functionality, their interaction with other molecules, et cetera, et cetera. So when you look at a product and it's purporting a certain amount of beta-glucans, one thing to remember is that these methods that are used to generate that is generally unreliable at the moment. And I've looked into certain brands, and I'm not going to name them, but I've looked into certain brands, and I believe that they do use these assay methods. And so it's great that they're saying there's beta-glucan content in there, but you don't really know what you're getting. And again, just focusing on beta-glucans ignores all the other polysaccharides and the other compounds that are very important to this effect that you're trying to get of immune modulation. So you'll notice a company like Host Defense, they don't include beta-glucan content in their labels, which is precisely for this reason. They say on their website, and this is a quote, stating a percentage on our labels when we know each methodology in each laboratory would yield different results would be misleading to the consumer. There is no uniform validated methodology in the industry. This makes us reluctant to make any claims on our product labels and make any purported beta-glucan level listed for any mushroom product dubious. Now, if we look beyond the beta-glucans, it's very, like I said, it's very multifactorial. There are other bioactive compounds, many of which work cooperatively to optimize multiple aspects of health and wellness. Now, this has been confirmed in scientific literature many times over. Many of these active ingredients are not water soluble, meaning that they're not pulled out by hot water extraction. One thing we're going to talk about later is how to consume. I personally, and I'll spoil this now for you, I use powders because it's a lot easier to get the dosing that you need with some of these things. But also you can just pour it into your morning coffee and drink it. And it's a quick and easy way to get that stuff back. Now, inclusion of these beneficial co-ingredients increases the overall beneficial effect, as you would imagine. Ooh, almost just drank a fly. Another thing you're going to hear about is mycelium versus fruit body. You're going to see this on a lot of products, right? So the fruit body is just the mushroom that if you're walking and you look in the ground, you see a mushroom popping up, that's the fruit body. The mycelium is the network underneath the fruit body. The mushroom goes spore, mycelium, fruit body. If you look at the timeline of a mushroom's life, you're looking at less than 1% of it is spore, about 5% is a fruit body, and then the rest, the 95-ish%, is mycelium. So the vast majority of its time is spent as mycelium. Now, mycelium often act as the immune response of the fungal organism. Now, while spores exist to sprout the mycelium and the fruit bodies come and go for reproductive purposes, the mycelium really represents the primary body stage of existence, right? It supports the growth of the fruiting body. Which is really more a seasonal reaction to environment stimuli. Like if you get out really early in the morning, if you want to check the quality of your soil, there are mushrooms that will sprout in the early morning before the sun gets too high if the soil has got a really good network in there. So you want to, if you're gardening, get out there early on and see if some of these mushrooms are popping up. that's the quick tale of the fruiting body, the mycelium. Now, what does it say if my product is mycelium versus my product is fruiting body? Both mushroom mycelium and mushroom fruiting body offer benefits to human health. Okay? It's easy for a mushroom supplement to emphasize the importance of the fruiting body in their marketing products because that's primarily what people know and that's, are going to connect with. But mycelium, the idea that it's somehow less beneficial is just not true at all. It's been scientifically proven many, many times to be just as active. So if someone's trying to hit you with fruiting body versus mycelium, all these different things, don't let that bog you down. Some of them are going to talk about how they were grown on oats or brown rice. These have all shown, and a 2019 NIH study showed that the immunologically supported activity of mycelium-based capsules that were grown on brown rice. Similar studies have shown that it works with other sort of things. So what are the products that we can look at? Now, Host Defense is a great one. That's a mycelium-based one. But you can go to a company like Rise that has a mushroom blend. That's a mushroom coffee that has cordyceps, shiitake, turkey tail, reishi, king trumpet, lion's mane. The problem is they don't tell you how much is in there, right? So they might have 1,000 or maybe say they put 1.2 grams in. That's 200 milligrams of each. It's not really up to the dosing that we've seen in studies, right? Now, I'm not saying that's what's in there, but that's why it's important to know. We can look at something like mud water, right? Now, mud water says they have 2.24 grams of mushrooms in there. And we know they have 4 grams of mushrooms or 4 different types of mushrooms. So assuming it's equal, you get about 560 milligrams of those mushrooms. So, you might need to drink 2 of them a day to get to that 1,000 threshold. And like we said, a lot of these needed 2 to 3 grams. Now, the mushroom powder through Host Defense will get you to that. But there's another really good company, again, not sponsored. I just love this dude. Laird Hamilton has in his Laird Superfood a line of mushroom products. Firstly, let's just say this. Laird is the man. Like, that's the dude. That is the ultimate dude. Okay? But if you look at his product like his Focus and Memory mushrooms, right? 1.3 grams of organic lion's mane, L-theanine, and coffee berry. Now, typical L-theanine dosing is like 200 milligrams. Typical lower end coffee berry dosing is like 100 milligrams. Sometimes people go up to 800, but 100 to 300 is pretty standard for coffee berry. So if we're looking at 100 milligrams of coffee berry and 200 milligrams of L-theanine, that means you can get a gram of lion's mane, which is not necessarily the high dose of lion's mane, but there's definitely benefits to it. And the serving size is a half a teaspoon. Right? So now you're looking at a formula that is a lot more transparent. And obviously they're not going to tell you the exact, so that those numbers could be wrong, but you're going to be getting a decent amount of lion's mane for a very good price. You can get their performance mushrooms, maitake, lion's mane, chaga, cordyceps. And again, you go into ingredients for mushrooms and you go and you look at the supplement facts and you see how much are in there and you can do the division and you can see how much of each you're getting. Now, his single powders, like lion's mane, he has a solo lion's mane powder, 2 grams. That's a great dose. Single oyster mushroom, 4 grams. Turkey tail, 2 grams. Reishi, 2 grams. Like for $25, this is pretty good. This is a pretty good dosing. One of the cheaper ways to get a very good amount in, right? And you're getting about 45 servings per. I mean, it's hard to beat that. So Laird, I think, is a great resource for this and just a great dude in general, like the absolute man. So that's mushrooms, everybody. I hope everyone enjoyed. I encourage you to eat them in your diet. They're very healthy, fiber, minerals, helping your immune system, anti-cancer. I mean, cancer rates are exploding right now. So let's everyone be healthy. And if you start taking mushrooms, right, think of the other benefits. Think of the things that you can get out of, right? Someone texts you and says, hey, any interest in jumping in the ocean today? And you can text back, no, not really. And then they go, dude, it's so good for your health. You lazy. And you're like, I'm on shrooms. I tried to take a Sam dose of lion's mane. I freaked out. I woke up sweating. I had a dream. It's a whole thing. Or if you go into work and people are like, what's up with you today? You seem very spraying, like, well, I'm on shrooms. And then you have to go to HR, and HR is just like, are you on shrooms? And you're like, yeah. Took a bunch of lion's mane, some portobello, and they go, oh my gosh, we thought you were tripping. And you go, no, I'm not tripping. I hope this was informational. I hope this was educational. And I'm very excited this year. We're going to be focusing a lot more on health stuff. I really love health stuff. I'm trying to get as many experts in here as possible and spread the good word on how everyone can start to get better. It's very hard to go through a lot of these supplements and figure out what I should be taking and what's going to be the most bang for my buck, especially when you're trying to recover from chronic illness. My personal opinion, lion's mane, reishi, turkey tail, cordyceps, agarikon. I've got the most bang for my buck from those mushrooms, and those were the ones that I would start with first and then expand into others. Okay. That's a good place to end. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great week.